But I had that constant reminder that like pulled me towards medicine. And I was like, if I can pass through this, I can literally help people like this. Every single night that I meet at the hospital, I work with 9 patients. And it reminded me every single time that like, this is why I'm doing it. And all this hard work will be worth it because look at how grateful they are and look at the impact just me being kind right now with no medical experience can provide. Can you imagine what a doctor who has this experience and this care and this love for patients and empathy and kindness can provide to a patient who's at their most vulnerable state? So I think like my biggest answer to that question is always like, I've proven to myself that I can withstand difficulty.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be uncomfortable. Like, you don't have to always be happy. And I think that's very against what a lot of like podcasters say now. Like, that's really not the mentality. We really, really prioritize comfort. We prioritize like self-care, and these are important. But I think we also have to be okay with difficulty because that builds you, right? And if you're always prioritizing self-care, then you're not growing ever.
Hi, I'm Emma Zareen, your host and a 16-year-old engineering student, policy enthusiast, and hopeful future STEM school survivor. Welcome to She Persists. Before we dive in, I just want to take a second to say how grateful I am for each of you. Every listen and every bit of support genuinely means the world to me. When I started She Persists, it started as a little dream to share real stories of young girls in STEM who are challenging norms, finding their place, and inspiring change. Seeing that idea come to life has been so rewarding, and honestly, it's just the beginning. If you've been enjoying these conversations, I'd love for you to be a part of our community by following this podcast. It's one of the best ways to help us grow, share even more incredible stories, and connect with a wider audience. And I hope the conversation doesn't end here. I hope you carry these stories with you and let them be a constant reminder that your voice truly makes a difference. Today's episode is very close to my heart because I'm joined by my very first TJ alum guest, Isra Satiar. She's now a senior at Georgetown University majoring in human science, and her accomplishments are truly remarkable. She received the prestigious Davis International Peace Prize Award, works as a patient care technician in the surgical ICU, and led a health education project for Rohingya refugees at the world's largest refugee camp in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. On top of that, Isra has been deeply involved in neuroscience research since freshman year and leads organizations like the Minority Association of Pre-Health Students and is president of the School of Health Academic Council. So with that, let's get into it. Here's Isra Satiar. Today, I have Isra Satiar with me, a current student at Georgetown University majoring in human science and also a proud TJ alum. She's been involved in neuroscience research since freshman year, works in the surgical ICU as a patient care technician, and somehow still finds time to lead organizations like the Minority Association of Pre-Health Students and the School of Health Academic Council. Isra, I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm so excited to hear all the incredible things that you've done. So welcome to She Persists.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So I want to start with the question, what first got you interested in human science? Was there a specific moment or experience that really got you into the field?
Yeah, great question. When I was applying for colleges, Georgetown's their School of Health, and on top of that, their human science program really, really stood out to me. Like that was like a very specific niche that I only found at Georgetown and no other undergrads offering that. I think throughout TJ, like my love for biology and more like working with people and intimate connection with like patients solidified. I used to volunteer at a nursing home near my house, a memory care nursing home. So I got like very exposed to different neurodegenerative diseases. And I think through that, I really, really realized that I love working with people one-on-one. Like I really love patient care. Even though they weren't my patients, I was a volunteer position. I got a lot of like clinical exposure with them. So I really knew that I wanted to maybe explore pre-medical in my undergrad. And apply to medical school eventually, like for grad school. And so I wanted a program that would allow me to like explore that a little bit more. Of course, there are really great biology programs all over. So Hopkins is a really great biology program. I know UVA does. So these are all the schools that I was looking at. But when I saw that Georgetown has like a school of health, so it's focusing on that like pre-health idea, and on top of that, it's focusing only on humans. So of course I was getting like a diverse education is important, which I think AP Bio and stuff like that gives you in high school, but being able to like really hone in on like the human studies. So my entire major is essentially like human health and disease is what I study all of 4 years at Georgetown. And I'm doing the same thing this last year. And I've like really, really loved how much that has prepared me, I think, for medical school. I'm applying for medical school right now. And I really think like I'm able to look at things with a very different eye because I've taken pathophysiology classes already. When I was studying for MCAT, I was like, wow, I've already like seen a lot of these in clinical context, like with different intersections of my major, of working at the hospital, of research. So I feel like all these things have kind of like intersected perfectly, because I chose a human science major out of all.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you were able to find that niche at Georgetown
Yeah.
and you're really able to pursue that. So, I want to ask about your patient care
Yeah.
experience. I saw that you've been a patient care technician in the surgical ICU for over 2 years. What's been one of the most meaningful experiences or moments you've had with a patient?
Gosh, yeah, great question. So I to give a little bit of context of how I got into this role, um, I walked into college with an EMT certification. So I got my certification this summer between senior year of high school and freshman year of college. So I knew I wanted to do some kind of like work, and I needed to get a certified certification to get involved in that. So I walked in, and we have a really great EMS program on campus called GERMS, which is like our Georgetown Emergency Response Medical Service. And I shadowed with them for a couple days, and they have such a great group. But I felt like what was happening is I wasn't able to get a really deep understanding of the patient's situation. A lot of it was sometimes if it was too complex, we would have to transport them to the hospital. And sometimes if it was simple enough for us to solve, it wasn't really in depth like medical. And so I felt like I wanted to be in the hospital more so. So I started looking at volunteer positions in the hospital. But even that was really just like wheeling patients around and stuff like that. I just didn't get to get intimate or like really get care with a patient. So I started looking into like actual employment, which is very hard with school. Like doing
Yeah.
part time, they're not as flexible with your schedule. Like the way Germs allows me to like move around my finals exam schedule and stuff like that. Um, an issue with working at the hospital is like it's not flexible like that. Also, like the shifts are like 12 hours, and so it's
Yeah.
like usually overnight 12 hours. I do 7 p.m. to like 7:30 a.m. Um, and so, like, and you're, like, up and running around the entire 12 and a half hours. So there's a lot of issues, of course, working at the hospital, like, in terms of trying to balance that with school. But the experiences I've had at the hospital, like you mentioned, has been so, so meaningful. Like, I think that has been my most significant thing that has led me to, like, I know it's this field for me and nothing else. Thinking about a very specific patient encounter, I think one big one was when I first started working. I didn't expect to meet so many different kinds of patients. You think about like, okay, I know these skills. I know how to clean patients. I know how to help them walk. I know how to draw IV and take blood. So you expect that you're just gonna kind of use these skills. But what I end up using the most, or like what sets you apart as a patient care tech, is not these skills. Like everyone has these skills. They train you on the job. It's like your ability to look past the surface. Thinking of this one patient who it was my second week of working, I think. So I was still under preceptor. He just got an amputation. So he had very quickly lost a lot of autonomy. He really wasn't an old man, right? He was a pretty young guy, and he was very used to being independent and stuff. And to suddenly be bedridden and have to rely on the nurses and the techs who take care of you at the hospital, who he lives alone, so he's never done this before. He's never had to rely on someone like this before. I think that was the most difficult part for him. Like it was more difficult than like the loss of his autonomy was more difficult at that point than the loss of his body, right? And he had a lot of difficulty trusting me. Like was a big part. I wasn't ready for that either. Like I didn't walk in expecting that. I learned so much out of that one patient. Like he still sticks with me because like he really challenged me, I would say. Like, it was difficult for me to walk in there and be like, I don't know what I'm gonna expect. He might yell at me. He might get angry at me for trying to help him. Like all these things were just very like I feel like it was scary for me walking in first, having a patient who wasn't really cooperating. Like I think people, like, forget that these are meaningful too, but, like, this was one of my most meaningful because I think I changed so much after him. I started looking at patients very differently. I started, like, actually trying to understand, like, a patient's full picture and, like, why is he being angry at me, right? Why is he irritated, right? It's not about his pain at that point. Like, we gave him morphine and stuff, but it's more about, like, where does he come from? And his background is not being taken care of by someone. And so, like, all these different things, I feel like I learned so much out of him and looking at someone's full context and really, really trying to like dig deeper about like what might be causing their pain so that you can actually help solve it instead of just like giving pain meds, which is not something that can be solved by pain meds.
I really love what you just said about
Yeah.
seeing the full picture because I think you, as a patient care tech, are just learning so much about human beings and how they're processing these emotions, especially in such a difficult situation for themselves
Yeah.
when this is so new to them. And what you just mentioned with that patient and about how he's really having to trust people and allow them to take care of him when he's not used to that. That's so valuable for him too. First of
Oh
all, he's
yeah.
like learning to take this care from other people, and that's a great skill. And that's so nice that you were able to provide that for him.
Yeah.
But also for you too, just getting to learn about him and learning about these different backgrounds. And I think that's
Exactly.
really valuable.
Yeah, and we're so lucky to get these experiences at this
Yeah.
age, honestly. Like so many people, because Georgetown's hospital is a teaching hospital, so you meet a lot of medical students, you meet a lot of residents. So it's like a lot of people are like for the first time really getting real like solid clinical exposure at the hospital. And you see that a lot of people who are so much older than me haven't been able to learn these things yet because they haven't been exposed to this stuff yet. So I like every time I get a patient who's very difficult to deal with, quote unquote, or has a very different background from me, or like it takes a lot out of me to understand their context, or like is homeless and stuff, right? I'm so more than anything, I'm so grateful that I'm like I get to feel this or I get to learn this at 19 or at 20. And then when I become a doctor in the future, I've already had this experience, right? I
Yeah.
can just apply that. Oh, I knew someone before. This is what they were like. How are you different, right? So it's like I'm more and more grateful for very difficult experiences than anything else.
Yeah, you'll walk
Yeah,
into your big career and you'll be so much more open-minded and you'll
exactly.
understand how to really work with people who have very different mindsets. So I think
Yeah,
that's really valuable.
absolutely.
So, how do you mentally balance the emotional side of patient care with the scientific side of your studies?
Well, that's a good question. More than balance, I think it integrates seamlessly. Like I'm lucky that it does. I kind of got interviewed about like getting a role at the hospital like 2 years ago, and I said something similar, which is like I think because when I first started working at the hospital, I was taking orgo. Orgo is the bane of my existence. I hate orgo just as much as people say orgo is bad. And so I would be like in the depths of orgo and be studying for these exams that are so hard and I don't know how to prepare. And the one thing that we say in Orgo is like the amount of time that you study doesn't directly correlate to your grade. I'd be like in like hours and hours of studying with limited progress. And I'd forget why I want to do this. Like that was my biggest problem is I would dislike it and it would discourage me and I would really lose motivation very quickly for pre-med. Um which is crazy because how can one class take that much out of you?
No, he can't.
Yes, that one can for real. I learned that the hard way. But going to the hospital, like I would do orgo over the week, and then I would work a night shift on like a Friday night or like a Saturday night, and it would just bring me back to my purpose. Like that was I was so lucky to have that because a lot of people like I feel like left orgo sophomore year and kind of dropped pre-med with that. But I had that constant reminder that like pulled me towards medicine. And I was like, if I can pass through this, I can literally help people like this. Every single night that I meet at the hospital, I work with 9 patients. And it reminded me every single time that like this is why I'm doing it. And all this hard work will be worth it because look at how grateful they are and look at the impact just me being kind right now with no medical experience can provide. Can you imagine what a doctor who has this experience and this care and this love for patients and empathy and kindness can provide to a patient who's at their most vulnerable state? So I'm like more than like it was a lot of work. I can't lie. Like studying with I was taking a full load my sophomore year. I think my junior year was one of my worst years because I was balancing that with MCAT on top of
Yeah.
working at the hospital as well. So all this stuff like the it does get very difficult time management wise. I think the reward is undeniable. Like it's so much higher than I could ever put into words or I could ever like think about time management wise. So I'm very lucky for it.
I think that's amazing what you said about how you were just able to keep gaining that motivation from these real world experiences and
Yeah.
just seeing how everything that you're doing for these patients, all the care and all this empathy, like you said, and this kindness that you're showing them, it just
Yeah.
really makes an impact so much bigger than what you can imagine.
Mhm.
And that's really going to stay with them for their entire lifetime. Even if it's you being kind to them for one night and you taking care of them and just being there for them, that really does leave an impact on them.
To add on just a bit to that, 'cause I love what you said, like that impact on them. It's hard for me to think about that being on this side of things. But the biggest reason why I entered medicine is because my mom was very very ill when I was young. She got diagnosed with lupus when she was like 24, 25. And at that time, there wasn't much research done on lupus, and so they didn't know how to treat her. Like they really went through like mostly cancer treatment. So she went through chemotherapy and all this stuff. And what surprises me the most is she still talks about to this day how difficult it was back then for her, but she talks about all the nurses and the doctors who were so kind to her, and she remembers every single one of them like it was yesterday. And that's the only way that I'm able to put myself in their shoes, in the patient's shoes, because I'm like, I'm sure if I showed them this kindness, right? It's 3 a.m. and they've been poked all night. They've been like tried to like put in new IVs and they've been in the ER and just a good smiling face right now that's like, hey, it's okay. I know you're scared, but I got you. Like that feeling to get that in the most unknown, like scariest place ever is a hospital, to be
Yeah,
honest, for many people.
of course.
Like we are so privileged to give that, to be honest. I think it's like medicine is one of those fields where like the more human you are, the more it pays off. And I'm privileged to be able to provide that for them.
I love what you said about putting yourself in their shoes. I
Yeah.
think that's really hard to do sometimes, you know.
Yes.
We can really easily just say, "Oh, I'll put myself in their shoes."
Yeah.
And but it's hard to actually do that. And so you being able to put yourself in their shoes and just seeing how much of an impact you're making on their life and, you know, how much of an impact this has on their future too is just so valuable.
Yeah. I
So,
hope so.
I also want to ask when you volunteered as a licensed medical assistant at HealthWorks,
Mhm.
did anything surprise you about the reality of community healthcare?
Yeah, that's the exact reason why I started working at a free clinic. You're absolutely right. Because so many people ask me, like, "You already work at a hospital. Like, why'd you go to a free clinic after that?" That was the exact reason. Because at the hospital, I get to see patient care and deep, like, medical issues and stuff and clinical complications, but I don't get to see, like, like the insurance side of things. I don't get to see like what if they can't pay for this, right? And that's all the stuff that I saw at this free clinic. There were so many patients who were coming back year in year for the same issues. One patient needed a liver transplant. That was her biggest deal, right? And we know like there's so many people usually have like the biggest difficulty of liver transplant is when you get on the list and if you're like high up on the list to get that transplant. Her issue wasn't even that. She just couldn't afford it, right? She didn't have insurance. So year in year her condition got worse and she came to us and we gave her the same kind of diagnosis, right? That like this is what you need. Like we can put you on a list and stuff. And she just couldn't afford it and she was scared to kind of move into that. Citizenship was like a big issue at that time for her as well. So it was just so heartbreaking when you're like, I'm not me myself, but like I was working directly with providers and they're like, I'm someone who can provide what she needs if I can connect her to the right resources, but she can't get it, right? Like there's some invisible barrier in the
Yeah.
middle. And that hurt almost more than when you see complications in the hospital because at least in the hospital you're like, I'm doing everything I can, right? Like the family can live in peace or even see their family member pass away in peace, knowing that we did everything that we could and they were able to provide all the resources that they can. But at the free clinic, you're like, I can't. Like I can
Yeah.
provide what you need, but you can't get it. Um, and that's so scary that some people in our community who live houses like 10 minutes away from us, right, have a completely different reality of how healthcare goes for them than ours is. But I think like when I was there, what I really saw and what I really admired in the doctors is that they would take time to help these situations more than just medically. Like they would sit down and try to find free resources around them, right? Try to find Spanish speaking resources that would be able to like maybe fund them or connect them to Catholic churches, to mosques and see if anyone could provide resources. It became a lot more like this is your friend and you need to help them find this one resource. Let's work together to do that. It was a lot more of like, I'm a doctor, he's my medical expertise, and let's see how we can help you about it. I would really advise anyone who wants to be pre-medical to at least shadow or work like a little bit in a free clinic, even if that's not your entire experience, because it completely changed the game. Like it's so different than how I see hospital work. And I think like even if I were to end up working in a hospital full time as a career, um, it would be a blush for me to do so without understanding what it's actually like for so many people, for more people than not, what like the actual insurance reality is for everyone.
Yeah, it's so heartbreaking to just think about how so many people don't have these resources that seem such human necessities,
Yeah.
being able to get care or being able to get like that liver transplant that you were talking about
Mhm.
when you need it. It's so essential for, your body and you being able to survive and be well and feel good. So I think it's really heartbreaking to think about how so many people aren't able to get access to that treatment. And I really love the work that you're doing and you getting to really embrace that and see that in a community healthcare setting.
Mm.
So I also want to ask about some of the research that you've been
Yes.
doing because you've been doing research since your freshman year of college.
Mm.
I know that you've done some research in high school as well at the Children's National Hospital.
Oh.
But what was it like diving straight into projects at Georgetown's School of Medicine right out of high school?
I wanna credit a lot of this to TJ. Honestly, I think TJ has given me the foundation to jump right into things. Like, in college, a lot of my professors don't take freshmen to their lab because they wanna give that one-year transition for people to get used to the workload of college. My freshman year's workload at Georgetown within the School of Health in human science, which is known to be one of the most rigorous majors within the School of Health, was still not as bad as TJ. Like, was not as bad as my worst year with TJ. And so I had a lot of, like, free time on my freshman year, and also TJ teaches you how to balance all the
It
extracurriculars as well,
does.
right?
Yeah.
Like, everyone teaches similarly doing leadership. If they're interested in pre-med in college, they'll start doing a little bit of, like, shadowing or something, like, everyone gets involved in a lot of things at TJ. I don't know how much that culture has changed so far, but that is the biggest jump for most people in college. They're not used to juggling like that, I would say. And TJ kind of set me up for success for that. So walking to freshman year, and also I did mentorship my senior year at TJ, which allows you to be in a research lab for a full year. So I was already used to being in a research lab as well, working with scientists, working with PhDs and doctors and stuff, which a lot of people kind of get more used to doing their sophomore, junior year within college.
Mhm.
And so I think for all this, I felt mentally and emotionally ready to kind of jump straight in. So freshman year, I really, really looked for a lab. I knew I loved neuroscience stuff because I worked in that nursing home in high school, and I really loved like looking into like neurodegenerative diseases and stuff and aging in general. And I also really loved hands-on things. And my lab, our model animal is a rodent. And so we do everything. We do surgeries on rodents, on rats. We work with mice. And so everything was very hands-on. It was like very surgical, I would say. And it's very early for me to know what specialty I want, but I think like this has given me some exposure to be comfortable with blood and cutting things and stuff like that. And so I more and more I feel like it's really aligned with some of the stuff that I was interested in at the time. And I was still open to exploring. Um, one piece of advice I would give is before you enter a lab, and this is very important to me, is gauge the lab's vibe. And that's very casual, and I say that very colloquially, but I think that is the most important thing about joining a lab. Because even if it's not 100% what your interest is, right now our interests are very malleable, right? Like
Mhm.
it wasn't neurodegenerative disease. My lab studies more and more aging, but it was still neuroscience for me, right? So it wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but the energy of the lab, how collaborative they were, how open they were to teaching me things. They knew I came from a completely different lab. I came from the genetic side of things in high school. Yet they were still open to taking the time to training me, to teaching me pipetting, to start literally with that, and then moving up to literally doing full blown surgeries on rats on my own. And that would kinda go into papers and stuff, like these really, really important data sets they would trust me with, and they allowed me to build that trust with them. I think that's the most important thing about finding a lab, and I took my time. I got very lucky to find that within the first few months of college, but that was really what I was looking for more than anything else. A lot of my friends joined labs freshman year just like me, and then their junior year, they switched into new lab because their old lab wasn't flexible with their hours and stuff, right? And a bit of it is luck, right? You get lucky
Yeah.
on some of this stuff, but try to be as intentional as you can walking into college. If you think you're ready freshman year or sophomore year, whenever you think you are, really kind of focus in on, is this the environment I want to be in?
Yeah, I think what you mentioned at the beginning about how TJ set you up for success,
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. I don't think the culture has changed too much. One of the most valuable things about being able to go to TJ is that, you really get those experiences of balancing your work life, your school, and like actually getting to do things outside of just high school that really, where you get to really focus on your passion and
Mm.
what you want to do after high school. But I think, yeah, mentorship was a great opportunity,
Yeah.
and I'm so glad you got to do that. So, your independent project focuses on how mirtazapine affects neuronal dendritic spines. What
Yeah.
led you to explore that specific topic?
Yeah. So my lab has been studying aging for a while, and really my lab is looking for like different markers of aging. My lab is in the Department of Pharmacology. We look to see if different pharmacological agents, so basically different drugs, can kind of reverse some of these effects that we're seeing in aging, right? So general study, we'll do an old rat and a young rat, and we'll see, one, is there a difference in like, for example, one marker that we found is norepinephrine release. This is pretty well known in the field already, that the amount of norepinephrine released is different in young rats versus aged rats. Aged rats will release less. And we found that if you add this drug, this mirtazapine, that will boost those levels of norepinephrine. So now we're seeing no difference between young rats and aged rats. So we're basically trying to see if all these differences that we're seeing between young and aged, first of all, confirm those. And second of all, if you add mirtazapine, do we see those reverse? Or do we see those boost up to young levels, for example? So this study, this the dendritic spine study, I really wanted to study something anatomical. Like I mentioned, I really like surgery. I really like tangible, like looking at like the literal shape and size of things. So this basically what I'm looking at here is in young rats, there's something called, so we have neurons, right? These are the main connections in the brain. These are what allow memories to form. And between two neurons, we have something called dendritic spines, and that's what actually connects the neurons. What we see is that in aged rats, those spines, literally, they look like little mushrooms, and that's where they all synapse together, connect together. Those mushroom-shaped things, mushroom dendritic spines, are actually smaller, one, in aged rats, and there's less amount. So lower density and changed morphology is what we call it. And we're trying to see if adding mirtazapine allows those to change. Like, can we bring them back up to a normal size, normal amount? So I really wanted to study like this literal, like tangibly, you can see the shape and size changing. That's where the inspiration for moving in that direction of dendritic spines came from. What I love the most about the study is that the experiment that I do is called perfusion. So basically, we need to get to be able to visualize these brains, we have to clear all the blood out of the brain. And how we do that is we put the rat under deep anesthesia. Also, I've learned so much about like the ethics of rats and using rodent studies and stuff like that in science. And so I'd love to talk more about that. But basically, we sacrifice the rat under deep anesthesia. Basically, it's an open heart surgery, and we put a needle into the heart and use its own circulatory system. Like basically, it's blood running, and we insert saline to the circulatory system. So now we're pushing through its last few breaths and last few circulatory system functioning, we push saline through the body. That's clearing out all the arteries and the veins with our saline. So that's making it clear. So instead of cutting out the brain and trying to make it as clear as possible, we're pushing clear fluids through the brain, and that makes it entirely clear. So you'll end up with a white, clear brain at the end from like a completely red brain. But I just love it. Like lets me look at the heart. It lets me explore surgery on like the heart level, like cardiothoracic, and it lets me like also do harvesting of the brain and do brain slices. So I'm also looking at like neurosurgery there. So it's interesting. Like I get to explore a lot of different kinds of surgery like
Yeah.
within this one experiment. I think that was really the most thing what pushed me towards it, because if you don't love the technique that you're working with, that's what you're doing day in day out, right? So it's important to actually like what you do. Um, so it was both like interesting to study anatomics, and then also it was so interesting to be able to like do this and get more and more practice and getting more precise. And um, like really, really focusing on accuracy and honing in on those skills.
Yeah, so for the spine in the rats, for
Yes.
the aged rats, does the smaller size impact like its health or any other diseases that it could have?
Yeah. So the spines are on these neurons, and they actually are what allow connections to form. So if they're smaller, there's less ability for those connections to form. It's harder for it to find another neuron to connect to. If there's less amount of it, there's less likelihood that it will connect to another neuron. So basically, neurons are what allows memories to form, right? And so if you're not able to connect to another neuron, you're not able to store memory, you're not able to retrieve memory, you're not able to form new memory. So it's really affecting its cognitive health is the main thing. That's really what we're studying in our experiments. We've also done behavioral experiments studying like literally their cognition, right? Seeing if they're slower to do things when they're aged and if adding mirtazapine changes that speed, right? We've also studied electrophysiology to see if we're seeing different like signals, like is there less level of amplitude seen when it's like young versus age. So we're really studying cognition and we know that these spines, the less amount and the smaller size leads to a worsened cognition.
I see. And so you're currently doing a rodent study. So
Yes.
you're focusing on rats. Do you see this research tying into future research on human cognition?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's the biggest jump to make is to go from rats to humans because there's so much risk there.
Yeah.
But I just presented so for context, I'm doing an honors thesis on this. So I've been doing this research for 3 years already, and my 4th year, I'm now tying all together, and I'm gonna defend my thesis in April 2026, and I'll be able to graduate with an honors in human science. And so I just presented my proposal for this year, to my entire human science class. That's like 50 of us, plus all my professors who are involved in like the research honors thesis committee. And I presented all this like rodent research, and the first question they got is, "Why haven't you moved to humans yet?" Right? Because you have such solid, we already have like as a lab such solid evidence showing like mirtazapine's literal effects. So hopefully this will move clinical soon. We'll see what actually happens. So it's a long process of getting funding,
Hmm.
getting the right like IRB approval. It's called it's International Research Board is what that stands for. But basically getting approval to work with humans and getting consent, right? And we're doing a pharmacological study. I think the best way to do it is I want to start with an observational study. So just one thing I forgot to mention is mirtazapine's an already FDA approved drug. Right now it's used as an antidepressant. So
Okay.
they'll prescribe it for depression. Um, but it's already approved, it's already safe to use, it's clinically been checked, and like its side effects are safe. So we're gonna see if we can repurpose it for another purpose. What we want to see is go back on maybe MedStar, which is Georgetown's hospital, maybe look at MedStar's reports and see if anyone has been given mirtazapine before who has been aged and see if they've naturally had any improving effects in cognition and stuff, and maybe test their cognition. So before doing an experiment where we're like giving some people the drug and not, and like a blind study where it's like risky, maybe just start with seeing since it's already safe if there's been any things found in the past clinically, and moving to an experimental like randomized control study.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I want to ask about the ethics that you were talking about earlier. What have you learned working in a lab with rodents about the ethics of using these rats in your studies?
Yeah. As a scientist, someone who's really like willing to dedicate my entire life to science, I see value in trying to find cures for different diseases for humans. I think the most important thing when it comes to the question of ethics is doing it in the most painless way possible. If anything comes at any harm to an animal physically, I think it should be out of question, right? If we're doing things without proper anesthesia, like not caring for their harm and their nerves and stuff like that, in that case, I think no matter what, even if you're finding the cure for cancer at that time, it's not worth doing that if you're not considering the ethics of this animal, right? But I think the way that we're doing it, for example, is we do deep isoflurane, right? So we don't even do injections. We put a rat in a little jar that has isoflurane in it, and slowly it'll fall to sleep, right? That's how it feels for the rat. And then we will do pinch tests we'll move it around left to right. We'll look at its eye to see if it's blinking, and try to kind of check all of these things to make sure it's not feeling anything. It's kind of completely out of consciousness before we move forward with the experiment. So I think the ethics kind of comes into play more so about doing your utmost best, like above and beyond, to make sure there's no pain for the rat when involved in this stuff. I think at the end of the day, like no matter what you do, it's kind of sad. Like
Yeah.
you're taking a life. Like, I don't think humans were naturally meant to do that, like to be taking lives and of other animals and stuff. And as a religious person, a lot of people are like, "Are you playing God, taking the life of these things?" Right? But I think it's what's required to make the impact on so many millions of people in medicine, right? We just need to be cognizant of if well, what we're doing isn't having a long term impact that we hope for it to have, right? Or do we actually have the intention for it to have a long term impact, right? You might say like it shouldn't take this many researchers and this many rats to find the cure for cancer, right? But are we all having the same intention to minimize harm and do the most good?
I think what you mentioned about really going above and beyond and doing your absolute best to make sure that this animal is not feeling pain or
Exactly.
any harm, that's super important in science. At the end of the day, a lot of the greatest advancements in medicine and such are happening unfortunately, on these animals,
Exactly.
it's also important to see and realize how many lives it is saving in
Mhm.
human lives too. Not to disvalue a rat's life,
Yes,
of
yes.
course not, but to see that balance in that exchange. I also want to ask about the research that you did in high school at the Children's National Hospital. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and what you did there?
We were basically looking for markers, they're called, miRNAs, and we're trying to see if any of these are genetically induced to lead to Alzheimer's more and more. I wanna preface this by saying it was COVID year, and so it was so difficult to get experience in this lab. Also, my amazing mentor, her name was Dr. Rachel Batebio. She was, like, one of the biggest inspirations for me to love research. It was my first exposure really to this much in-depth research. She was an MD, PhD, so she was an emergency, physician at Children's National. She would work with babies. And then also on the side, she was a full-time researcher, and now she's a PI of her own lab, which I was looking into her a few days ago. She's literally a superwoman. Like, she does everything and more. She's married. She wants to have kids. I saw her and I was like, there's really no barrier for women. If you want to do it, you can. Um, because this is something more and more I've been thinking about recently, right? I was like, because now that I'm applying to medical school and I'm thinking about like what specialty I want to do, and thinking about work-life balance and should I consider that now or maybe I should consider that when it becomes a problem, right? But will it be too late then? Like all these different things I'm so worried about, and I keep talking to different physicians and trying to get a gauge. But I think for women specifically, it's important to push yourself as far as you can, especially in this age where we're still we're still trying to overcorrect for the wrongs that have been done on women and women's rights and stuff. I think it's important for women to push themselves as far as they can without worrying about limits, and lean on community to help with the rest. That's what I'm banking on as I'm kind of moving into this career, but I loved seeing that in her. Like, I think, I wasn't as involved in my research as I am, like, these past 3 years where I'm, like, leading my own things, I'm making decisions for the lab myself. Um, but I really got to, like, shadow under her, and she would, like, allow me we did a lot of, like, cell culture and stuff. That was my first exposure to research like that, which I know a lot of TJ kids get exposure earlier on, but that was my first ever. And she was so, so patient with me. She got me interested in neuroscience even more because the way that she talked about her research and how much she loved neuroscience and how much she loved looking into obesity and Alzheimer's really made me fall in love with it. So I think like more than anything, what I took away from that lab, of course, like these skills on like the cellular level. So I looked into a lot of biochemical assays. That was very helpful for me to have a foundation jumping into research in college. But more than anything, she got me into research. Like she got me into looking into MD, PhD stuff.
I think something that you said that's so valuable in STEM is just having that role model that you can really look up to and seeing how much they've done and seeing how much you can really do and just pushing yourself in that field and just really seeing a path and a future for yourself that they really opened up to you. I think that's super valuable. So I want to ask throughout your time in research, what's one piece of advice that's really stuck with you from high school, from college, just in general?
Yeah. I think I learned this both through research and through patient care is to get comfortable not knowing what you're doing for a bit. I think that was a very scary thought to me because I always wanted to be good at things when I first started. But you inherently will not always. You will not be good at things when you first start. There's no reason for you to be good at things when you first start. There's also no expectation. Like the expectation comes from yourself. In research, all the skills that they would teach me, it was the first time that I was doing it, right? I had never handled a rodent before, right? I would go through the training and stuff, but I would be scared of doing it. I would be scared of getting bitten, right? You won't be good at stuff when you first start, and build in room for yourself to make mistakes. Be flexible when it comes to planning experiments and planning how fast things will like kind of pick up. Build in time to give yourself room to kind of mess up, right? I think that happened a lot with me. Like I really had to learn how to design experiments. It took me a while to kind of get very quick at reading research papers and taking out the most important pieces of it and building my own experiment. So just give yourself grace when you're first starting because I think it's very easy to be difficult on yourself, especially because well, there's a lot of undergraduate labs. A lot of like my professors in human science have their own labs and they'll take in students. And that lab is mostly built up of undergrads, right? Of Georgetown students. And so like they're surrounded by people who are learning at their level and making mistakes at their level. My lab is entirely PhDs, entirely master students. I was very difficult on myself. I was like, well, they're not making these mistakes, right? And they're in their fifth year and they're doing research like this and they're able to give talks like this, right? Why can't I? I was very hard on myself because I was surrounded by so much success and so many like accomplished people, but they weren't me at my age, right? And that's fine. And so like I think just really really give yourself a lot more grace because you are always your harshest critic. And so just be careful. Don't let that get to your head in a negative way. Like don't let that mess with you or discourage you. These mentors like are are really, really more impressed with you than you think. That really changed my mindset that they're proud of me and they're happy to like be the one guiding me through things instead of like being a burden on them.
Yeah, it's really easy to sometimes fall down that rabbit hole of just comparing yourself with others and just being like, "Oh, well, they can do this and they're only like 2 years older than me. Why
Yeah.
can't I do this yet?" It's also really important to understand that you're still in the learning process and
Mhm.
you're still learning so much. And eventually you will get to that level, you'll surpass that level, and you're going to be continuing to go down this path of doing things you love. And eventually you will get really good at it. What you said is just important to give yourself that grace and that leniency and understand that you're still working towards that same goal. And they also started in the same place as you
Mhm.
one time. So
Exactly.
they were just the same in your shoes. And it's just important to understand that everyone learns and everyone learns at different paces too.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
comparison is the thief of joy, as people
Mhm.
say. So just really be lenient with yourself and understand that everyone learns differently and you're also not at the same place in your career as people who are older than you. Yeah, I
Like, you
really love
have
that
to
advice.
compare yourself to yourself, and that's all,
Yeah.
right? Like, are you better than where you did it, like, the last time? Like,
Yeah.
however you did it the last time or the first time or the year before, are you more proud of yourself, yes or no? And that's really it. Like, there's no use comparing to other people because there's so many different factors that lead people to where they're at. And you're probably so much better at one thing than someone else is, and you're probably so much worse at one thing than someone else is, and that's fine. It averages out, right? Like, no one's a better person at something or worse at in general and stuff like that. So just be gentle, tread lightly with your.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to also just reflect on yourself too and think
Mhm.
like sometimes we don't think about it, but just seeing where you were 2 weeks ago or 3 months ago or a
Yeah.
year ago, and you really get to appreciate all the growth that you've had and just see how much has changed in
Yeah.
such a short or even a long period of time. And I think sometimes it's really easy to not appreciate those smaller levels of accomplishment because you don't really reflect on it and you don't see it just in your day-to-day life. But just seeing where you were in the past and where you are now, that can just be a huge motivator and just showing you that how much you can do, how much you can accomplish, and just pushing you to go even further.
Yeah.
So I want to ask if you had unlimited time and funding, what's the next question that you would want to pursue?
Ooh. One, I wanna see what other drugs that are already FDA approved and already safe to use can be used to help this cause, because I think America has this obsession with youth, I have to say. Everyone wants to be young. We have so many skincare products to make you look younger than you really are. Everyone wants to last longer, um, than we already are. And I think at the same time, what makes it so surprising is that we don't really tend to focus on our elderly. Um, Like, we've kinda created a program where we will, like, kinda put our elderly in nursing homes, and we're like, "Okay, we're good. We did our part," and that's all that can be done, right? But, like, we really love to see, like, this, like, 18 to 65, and everything after 65 is kinda useless, like, in America, is like, in terms of productivity. So I love the fact that my lab focuses on aging and really brings back the importance of looking into aging and how to, kinda help people who have already aged and to kinda, like, improve their cognition and stuff. We're not trying to slow down the process of aging, we're not trying to reverse aging, we're trying to mediate effects of aging a little less worse for people who are already aged, right? I like that importance there. So I kind of want to look into anything else that could help this population. I really, really would love to move into this clinical study. Like, I want to see if it's. I know that's a lot of resources, a lot of manpower needed for that. But I think the next step is absolutely digging deeper into seeing if this is like applicable in human populations.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that would be also be so valuable just seeing your work grow so much from this lab study to seeing how it can really affect humans. I'm sure you'll be
Agreed.
doing that one day. So good
I
luck in
hope
the
so.
future. Working in both research and clinical environments so far, where do you think that you've grown the most personally?
I think patient care, I would say. Um, well, both in different ways, right? But to kind of get into this patient care idea, I think patient care takes a lot of human personal growth more than research does. Research takes academic growth. It takes, of course, like I mentioned, the ability to make mistakes and grow from them and not get discouraged by that. But one big issue, and I hate to admit this, but one big issue that I had walking into patient care, especially when I worked at that free clinic, right? To tell a quick story, the first patient I ever saw at that free clinic was this really, really happy, friendly young man. And he came and sat, and I'm an MA, right? A medical assistant. So I kind of take all of his medical history and then I send it over to the physician and they kind of come in when they're ready. So I'm in this room with him and I'm talking to him about his experiences. Does he smoke? Does he drink? Family history, who's alive in his family, all these things, right? All like the kind of the go-to. And then he also, like, the first thing I noticed about him is how smiley he is and how friendly he is. Because, like, usually me as a provider, like, I try to be that person, but to kinda get that back from a patient is so sweet. Like, it's rare to find someone who's, like, that bubbly and loving and so, so, so grateful for, like, the bare minimum. Um, and, like, he would say, "Thank you," at every single little thing that I do. And so I open up his charts, um, to kinda ask about past medical history or medications that he's on, and I literally see a list of every single antidepressant ever. And then I see histories of suicide attempts, right, and suicide ideation, and he's literally listed for so many mental illnesses, just so many things that he's struggling with or, like, battling internally. Um, and to contrast that with my first impression of him is, like, this really sweet, loving, like, honestly more friendly than I am guy. Um, I would trust him to take care of me. Like, it was so heartbreaking to see that, right? Um, and I think he also realized, like, on my face, like, what I was looking at, and then he goes, "Oh, yeah, don't worry about that stuff." Like, he's trying to comfort me to not feel bad for him,
Yeah.
right? When he's the one going through all this stuff. Like, people like this who are just, like, literal, like, gold or, like, miracles or, like, stars or angels on this earth, right? It's the most heartbreaking when it comes to people like that. And he was a patient I don't really know what happened much after that, but I know he came in for something serious. He didn't leave my mind for a very long time. Like, I thought about him, I worried about him. I was only 18 when I first started working at this job, and, like, I found myself constantly, like, thinking about, like, "Gosh, what happened to him? And I wonder if he's okay," and, like, really worrying about this, and I would take it home with me, and I would think about it when I was talking to my friends and stuff like this, like, kinda, like, all the nice things he said and, like, probably how much he's been through to kinda get here. And I really, really struggled to separate this clinical life from this human life, right? That like we as providers take so much emotional toll. And I say providers as in like I'm just the medical assistant, right? But like even one day, like this job takes so much emotional toll out of you. And if it's not, you're not doing it right, honestly, right? Like it
Yeah.
should be, right? Like it's supposed to affect you. It's human, right? We don't want to get desensitized to pain. We don't want to get desensitized to struggles and stuff, right? Um, so it's important to allow that, right? But you're also responsible to immediately reset, right? Go back to being your happy regular self and move to a new patient within 1 minute. You leave one door, you walk into the next, and you're not supposed to carry the burden of another patient and their struggles into this new patient's lives, right? Like that expectation in medicine is the craziest thing for me, and I think that took me a little bit of time to get used to, right? Like to be able to separate myself from the things I saw at work, to not carry that burden, to not let it weigh me down when I was trying to go to bed or like really learning to balance like loving and caring and always being everything that I can be for a patient, but also not letting it drag me down because then it affects my care for other people and how much I can carry for other people. Like that's one growth that I think really slowly happened over time. Like it took me 2 to 3 years um, like, it kinda at the nursing home, so I would say, like, even more than 4 years, like, to kind of genuinely learn how to do this. And I think, like, what kinda once you figure this out, it makes, like, your job a lot easier because you can actually focus on the clinical thing side of things. But, like, that emotional I'm a very, very empathetic person, and I feel bad for everyone all the time. And so, like, to know that and to kinda learn how to not lose my empathy, but also not allow it to weigh me down. Like, that's a double-edged sword. Like, that yeah, I don't know how to do that, like, in words, but I guess, like, over time, you kinda learn how to, like, love someone and be there for someone, but not let it, like, kinda reach your heart to the point where you can't leave.
Yeah, and I think that's such a human feeling,
Yeah.
to just be put in the situation as a patient care technician or when you're just working with patients in patient care, to just you're there and you're empathetic and you want to be able to care for them and you want to do everything in your power, but then you realize like there's only so much I can do, right? And then you have to just move on to the next patient, like you
Yes.
said.
Yes.
And I think it really is a very fine line between being empathetic, like and just being there and in your entirety with that patient
Yeah.
and then not letting that continue with you and continue to the next patient or just go home with you. And I think that's so hard to do. And it's so easy to
Mhm.
say, oh, that's what I have to do. But
Mhm.
it's so hard to really do it. Like people say, easier said than done.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, of course, like as a human being, it's so expected to feel emotional, of course. So I think that's definitely a very difficult job for you and just for all patient care techs who are just working to be able to find that balance between like empathy and care and then also just, doing their job and being there for everyone. So
I
I
think it's
think,
very easy to get very robotic in this job. Like over
yeah.
time, after this long, it's so easy to get desensitized, right? Like you've seen so much blood, you've seen so much death. I've seen so much death, right, at the hospital and working with older patients and stuff. And I've had to do more like pre-morgue care after patients die. So basically, after the family has said their goodbyes and stuff. And because I work night shift, we kind of do these stuff during night shift
Mhm.
mostly to not like kind of interfere with day shift. I've wrapped bodies and like kind of like wrapped legs together in arms and paired like body bags to kind of send to the morgue for the morgue staff to kind of come and pick up, right? And so like how do you not like, how do you not become desensitized when you see things like this, right? And you see a person go from lively and talking to you, to kind of seeing their heartbeat slow down, to seeing the family come, say goodbye, cry. And then you just like pack up this body and leave, and you're on to the next patient. Like now the
Yeah.
room is vacant, and we have a new patient. It's literally how it feels sometimes, right? Once you see that over, like the first few times, you're like, "Wow, this is wrong. I feel so bad," right? But when you see that over and over and over again, how do you stay human in that? And I see a lot of physicians who lose that sense of love, right? And then they force that with patients, right? But like in the end of the day, this is a process to them, right? And to look at them and not judge them on how they treat their patients, on how they care and how they view the world, because people like kind of mourn in a different way, right? Like we say, like grief comes in so many different forms. I think I think one thing we don't talk about is how much grief providers also
Of
carry, you know what I
course.
mean? Like, it was like, it's not like a project for them that, "Oh, I learned this in medical school, I applied this, it didn't work next," right? Like, this is also they got close to this patient, they feel responsibility for this patient, right? But we don't really have the room to grieve, right? Like, we're not really expected to grieve, we're not expected to hold on to that grief. Kinda what I was saying is that, like, you have to move on from one patient to another.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, seeing all these different kind of forms of coping, different forms of grief and how people handle different things and really, really making sure to not judge and not make your own decisions or opinions or form things about how other people are. Like, I think naturally kind of these fall into place because you go through these different cycles and you see how you react so differently to different situations.
Yeah, and I can imagine, like, just as an outsider, just thinking about the fact
Yeah.
that, you've provided so much for this patient, you've cared for them, you've gotten to know them a little bit, and, their family's visiting them. You get to see their family and just see them not as a patient, but as a human being, and then
Mhm.
just seeing this taken away, and then seeing the pain that it's causing their family that, they lost a loved one, but also for the provider that they lost someone that, they're not close with, but they provided so much and they were getting to meet and getting to know. So I think even as an outsider, that thought is really crazy to
I
think about.
know.
So I can only imagine what providers go
Yeah.
through on a day-to-day basis. I mean, this is happening every single day where they lose more and more people. And I think, yeah, that's a really hard thing to think about and to really grasp.
And let alone grieve over this patient that you lost, it's your job to be the emotional support for the family, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And of course you're like, "Oh, this is someone's mother, like, how can you be like, 'Oh, I need my room to grieve?'" That's not what I mean, right? But just like we call the patients, like, I've been the person to call the patients and let them know that, "Hey, by the way, I know you just left, like, 20 minutes ago, but I like, her heart rate's, like, kinda slowing down even more and more, right? I think you guys should come back," right? Like, that phone call and then while you wait for patients to come, right, and monitoring her and being like, "Oof, like, it's should I have called earlier? Should I have called later?" Like, there's just so much that goes into it on the provider side, and the family comes, right? And to know whether to give them room or to be there for them while they're crying, it's just so hard to know what the right thing to do is. Um, and I think the hardest part is there's a lot of fear on the provider side of what if they get scrutinized later for whatever they did at that time, right? So there's a lot of, like, pressure in the moment that, like, oh, they might come back to me later and be like, "Oh, you should have done this," or "You didn't do this," right? And so worrying about all these different things at once, plus the emotional toll of, like, I have to be this rock for everyone when I've already lost 5 patients this week. Like, I think a lot more needs to be done in the field to help doctors process this emotional burden because I don't think other fields have an emotional burden like this. Like healthcare in general, especially nurses as well. Like, nurses deal with patients, I think, even more intimately than doctors do, and so, like, maybe providing free therapy or really having some program in place to help like healthcare move out of the stigma of talking about emotions and feelings and how literally difficult it is to be a provider. I think we have to talk about this a lot more.
Yeah, and I think, like, I myself, I know a lot of people who are doctors, family, friends, and
Mhm.
such, but I think it's really important to realize that doctors, at the end of the day, this is not just science to them. It's not just, oh, I'm doing this process, I learned it. Like you said, I went to med school, I learned it, okay, I'm applying it to every day.
Yeah.
I think it's so important to realize that these doctors and these providers and these nurses, they're human too. They have these human emotions. They have this feeling of pain, even if it's not someone they were close to. They have this feeling of, you know, even if I see somebody who I'm not very close to pass away or someone in their family pass away, you still feel that emotion. You still feel, even just feel sad for the family, and you just feel it's just part of your career now. And like you said, it's easy to be desensitized to it and be like, "Oh, I'm seeing this happening every single day." But I think it's really important to realize that these providers also have these emotions too. And it is, at the end of the day, even subconsciously, something that they are carrying with them. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that
Sorry
was
to spend so much time on that question. I think that's just such a
no,
great
I think
question.
it's so
Yeah.
important and so valuable to think about. So
Yeah.
you've done incredible work with your community and just outside of being a student. So I want to shift gears a little bit and
Mhm.
ask about some of the student groups that you're a part of at
Yeah,
Georgetown.
absolutely.
So what are some of the organizations that you're now a part of?
Yeah, I think, like, walking in freshman year, I got involved in a bunch of stuff, and over time, I've found my room in them. It's very hard for me to get involved in a community and not want to contribute positively, actually contribute. I feel bad, like, being a member in some of the things I'm in, because I feel like I'm kind of, like, eating off of, what the strong leadership team is providing to me, and I feel bad if I'm not, like, actually contributing in a positive way. So I feel like I've gotten involved, probably overly committed to a bunch of different clubs, but over time, I think I found my space in what I actually love to do. Kind of split it up, like, in my head, I have it with, like, refugee and community work, um, and advocacy work on that side, and then I split it up into, like, pre-health, pre-medical, community peer leadership. So to cut to the refugee stuff, I cut it off at Georgetown, being on the board of No Lost Generation, which is the only refugee group we have on campus, really. It started off as a pretty small group, but I know it's expanded a lot more and more now. But I think, like, that group gave me the foundation to, like, learn about, like, actual refugee issues and, like, the advocacy side of it and, like, what the actual laws are and then what are we really battling in this country in terms of this refugee issue. Um, and the other side of things, is I'm part of GUMAPS. So my sophomore year, I was vice president for this club, which stands for Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students. What's been so beautiful for this club is when we first started off. So Georgetown is a predominantly white school, I would say. So our demographics are really white, and so I think what really happened in that club, especially my freshman and sophomore year, we had a lot of non-white students. I think that was most of the diversity. We talk about, like, minority. It was like minority of Georgetown, which is non-white. And over time, like, especially this year, there's a lot more Hispanic and Black students in this club, and I love to see that. Like, we really, really move towards, like, medical minorities because I know there's a lot of South Asians and a lot of Asians in healthcare, right? But to really see it actually shift towards its original, like, purpose, and not kinda just serve as, like, a transition or, like, a
Yeah.
everyone else kinda club, like, it's been so beautiful to actually see, like, that means the things that we're hosting and the panels that like, hosting and the doctors that we're bringing in, like, genuinely resonate with the community that we're trying to reach. Um so it's been so nice to, like, actually to see that growth a lot. And outside of that, I think my biggest thing, like, my main baby, I would call it, is academic council. That's basically our student government. I was president last year, and I got reelected to be president this year. Um, and, like, that's something that I kinda spend most of my weeks on, to be honest. Like, I save that for last because I do that the most.
Yeah, so now that you're the president of the School of Health Academic
Mhm.
Council and you were last year as well, what's one initiative that you're proud of leading or excited to lead this year?
Oh, yeah. Um, I think the biggest thing about this is that when I took on leadership my junior year, the club wasn't really in a good place, I would say. Like, we didn't have a really solid structured student government, I would say. Every single school has their own student government, like, within this, like, School of Health has one, our business school has one, of course, right? But I don't think we had a lot of structure in, like, how we wanted to use the club to its full advantage. And we recently, 4 years ago, when School of Health got founded, we got a new dean. And the biggest thing I noticed about him is that he is so, so open to student feedback, and it would be such a waste if we didn't, like, really build on that connection. So I worked all of my junior year to really work with him to advocate for students for different causes and to really build that trust with admin. Like, that's the first step, right? Of course, we have trust with our students, with like the people that we're representing. We're an 11-person board, but I think to have trust with admin is where big change can come, right? Even if it's between me and admin or, like, our exec board and admin, that's, like, where if we build that, we can have a lot of genuine change coming from the bottom up, right? And so I really worked my entire junior year to build that. And within 1 year, our budget went up by, like, almost 8K, I would say,
Wow.
which is crazy, right?
Yeah,
I
wow.
don't think we had a very solid budget before that, but things are, like, moving up a lot this year. So they're so much more open to if I propose something this year, they're like, "Okay, let's do it," right? There's a lot of trust and, like, Isra thinks that this can actually work out, right? And I have, like, a vision for how I want this to happen, and I've seen a lot more, especially within the last 3 years, they're a lot more trusting in the way that I see things, and I'm so grateful for that because that's very rare to find at the student level for deans to trust that. So I'm so grateful that they could been open to this. So more than, like, a specific initiative, I think, like, this general, like, trust building, and I'm really working this year because I know I'm gonna graduate, to hand over that trust to someone else, right? It's less about presidency to me and about, like, "Oh, like, here, someone else got elected and now you're good." It's more about, like, handing over this relationship
Yeah.
that I've built, right? "Hey, I'm trusting of this other person who's gonna be president next year. Can we all 3 try to build this now so that when I leave, there's not an empty gap,"
Yeah,
right?
you already have this connection.
Exactly. So I'm trying to, like, help build that connection this year because I worry that it'll call again or something like that if I leave. And so, like, one big thing that has been a big show of this trust is Last year, we did our first ever charity gala, and that was a huge scale event for our school. Like, we have our school is, I think, 400 people, which is, like, pretty small for its own, like, little school in Georgetown. We're one of the smaller schools. MSB is McDonald's School of Business, so, like, Georgetown's business school is a lot bigger than us, right? So they have a bigger budget, they have bigger scale events, but for our scale, this was a huge event. And it was the first year we did it on campus, and it was a big party and, like, a community building event for charity, for a refugee cause actually, because it was someone that I was working with. And because that went so well, this year we're taking it off campus and we're doing a boat cruise,
Wow.
right? And to kind of see this much change within 1 year, or like to even throw our first ever event that large scale within 1 year, like I think these are the initiatives that I'm like so proud that we've been able to do. It's less about like obviously the planning was absolutely exhausting. Like it was full time along with my MCAT, along with working at the hospital, along with research, like a full load of school. So it's like all these things plus like now taking on this leadership. And I'm someone who has a really high sense of responsibility, I would say, and it has been both a curse and a blessing, to be honest, right? It's a blessing in the sense of like I really feel like I owe my community, like they voted me in, right? And what type of person would I be if I just kind of sat there with this position in my hand, right? But also it's been a curse because like I really prioritize this more than other things, right? I prioritize this before my GPA a lot. And so like it's been great, but like it's also been difficult to balance. But like I've taken upon myself to really push this event specifically as far as possible before I graduate, right? Because I just want it to grow every single year, and I want to set it in a place where it's kind of set up for success the following year. And so, like, these are kind of the initiatives I'm so proud of, is, like, I really learned how to start from a new founded, like, the infancy of a school and build it up into actual structure that can be passed on, right? It's not just, like, a concept or an idea of, like, "Okay, let's figure out what we wanna do this year," but to have, like, these are the things that we always do, right? These are our traditions, to put in place traditions, to, like, actually consider so many voices, right? Because you're not when you're representing people, everyone will not be happy, and that's the biggest thing I learned. Like, I don't have the courage to be disliked. Like, there's a book called that. That's why I mentioned it, because there's like so many talks and books about like this idea of like learning that, but I have a very difficult time like not appeasing everyone. So like that's one thing that has been very hard. Like when it comes to like ticket pricing, right? Like some people think it's so fair and so cheap, and some people are like, this is crazy expensive, right? And so like you won't be able to make everyone happy, and no matter what, there will be complaints, right?
Yeah.
But to be okay with that and be like, I'm doing the best that I can. I'm trying to consider as many voices that I can. And it's not just about like democracy in terms of like majority wins, like to understand that as a leader, I'm helping like it's not always equality, and that's the hardest thing, right? Because how do you actually consider this like tangentially? It's like actually considering like how much does this person need, and is that enough of a need for me to kind of make this large scale change and stuff like this, right? And so I really learned personally how to be a leader. This forced me or like mold me into like a very strong like leadership voice. And I think whether I continue on student government in medical school or not, like I think it's changed me a lot, and it's given me like the confidence to work with people who are 3, 4 times my age, right? And present and represent a school at their table, right? Like I work directly with the provost, right? We have provost meetings every 2 weeks where we're meeting with all the student government presidents, plus like the deans of the school, plus the president of the school, the provost office, right? So like leading, like sitting with like the biggest change makers in the school and being like, this is what I've been sent with, and I'm gonna say it, and we're gonna figure out a way to change it. This is what the school needs, right? At the end of the day, if you change your mindset, the school, like, for example, Georgetown University, I was very scared of, like, "Oh, this is, like, a long it's not 1789 is when this was started. How am I gonna come in and make change?" Right? Like, the school is dependent on its students. The
Yeah.
school is nothing without its students. We are nothing without administration, of course, right? But also it's a two-way street, and it genuinely is, and that's not just a saying, right? Like, the school betters by student change, and to not be scared, but to actually see it as, like, an opportunity, and to see it as, like, good administration will love this, will actually take this very, like will actually, like, appreciate this so much. And to see things like that instead makes advocating a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think something you mentioned about starting this change, but also making sure that it lasts, that is so important because I think it's
Oh,
really
yeah.
easy, not easy, but I think it's a lot common
Yeah,
to just build something while you're president and then it just dies down once you're gone.
absolutely.
But I think what you're doing about creating this bond and this relationship that you've started with
Yeah.
this administration and
Yeah.
you've helped facilitate through the organization with the administration and really making sure that whoever's president next year is able to keep this going and then also these traditions that you're starting and just being able to continue this throughout the next student body and the next group of people
Yeah.
who are going to come in. So I think that's definitely super important and really valuable.
Yeah. And just one thing to add, this is so crazy to me because in high school, I was not involved in student government. I was so intimidated by student government. I was like, wow, SGA, and these people are like running the entire school. And TJ's student body is even smaller than college, right? And so like this was not something I ever imagined myself to get involved in. I didn't do MUN in TJ, I didn't get involved in debate, I didn't get involved in public speaking, right? I was very introverted as a child. I'm an only child, so I've never really grew up around a lot of people and stuff like that. I was homeschooled when I was younger. And so like all these things like didn't set me up to be what I am today or to kind of take the roles that I've taken today. And so I think like it's been so surprising to see myself in these roles. And to look later and see videos of myself and speaking at this event and at this event, right? And so like public speaking was never on my radar. Getting involved in big gigs or like learning how to like articulate myself really well wasn't really on my or like wasn't something I was intentional with. Like I think it's been very rewarding to see myself in these spaces that I never could imagine myself. And to give a little bit more of like personal context, I grew up in a community where culturally I don't think a lot of people saw girls in big leadership roles, right? The brown community is a bit like this, the Muslim community is a bit like this, right? And it comes less from religion and rules and more about just like how culture was back in the days. And it's kind of more so frowned upon to see girls in like being loud or being the representation of a man or something like that, right? And these are things I've had to like quietly like break through, but it's been so rewarding, even of course for myself, but more so to look back on my community and see people look up to me as like the new marker for how far you can go, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what I did and if I'm really deserving of being that person for other people, but like to be able to kind of just like give someone that confidence that like we came from the same place, right? Like if
Yeah.
I can do it, why can't you? Like that has been the most rewarding thing ever. Um, I feel like I've like especially this 4th year, like being president for the 2nd time, we don't usually have presidents for 2 terms, right? It's not like in a rule or like frowned upon anywhere. But it usually I don't think people usually get elected twice or run twice. So even being president like twice for the first time ever in the student government, um, and even, like, not being any role in student government, but being, like, president of our school of health and academic council, like, it's I think all of these things are things I just never imagined myself to do, or, like, a lot of people in high school were in student government, right? So it was just natural for them to move up, like, these are just not things I was intentional about, like, that's the biggest thing, like, for me, a lot of the things that I cherish the most today are not things that I planned, like, they come on my lap, or I just, like, kinda moved along what was calling to me, um things fall in place. I've learned over time, like, to trust that voice a lot more, and to depend less on this, like, strong plan that I make for, like, a 4-year plan when I walk into college.
Yeah, and I think what we were talking about earlier about how you were able to find that role model at the Children's National Hospital and
Mhm.
just, seeing yourself going from there and just really looking up to someone who's in a pretty similar path as you and seeing how that just shows you how far you can go and shows you that if she can do it, so can I. And then going from that to becoming that person for other people, I think that's amazing. Great job with that. Good luck with everything that you're
Yeah.
pursuing this year as well. I want to ask, what's one thing academically about high school that high school you would not believe today to be true?
Think especially my junior year taught me this. I always bring up my junior year because I think it was the one year where I didn't really have the luxury to be learning things. Like things had to go well for me to
Yeah.
be able to apply directly to medical school. It's way more common to not apply direct to medical school than it is to apply direct. Like I think 2/3 of most classes of most a medical school that I'm applying to takes in gap year students, right? So to have the determination to apply direct, that meant my junior year was very hectic, right? So I had a full-time like, people usually say MCAT is its own, like, full-time studying, right? Like, people will usually do a full-time 3 months or do, like, 6 months overtime of, like, part-time studying, right? And to balance that with one of a part-time job at the hospital, which is already not flexible, that was really my big year to build up my research so that I can apply for an honors thesis my senior year.
Mhm.
I had to get good data and stuff that year. So along with that, also my first year being president of student government, so I was actually building that relationship, and I knew if I didn't do that well, we wouldn't have a strong student government next year.
Yeah.
Um, and by the way, like this charity gala that I was telling you about, we call it fall ball. That happens in the fall semester. So this is also like my busier time. So that along with my refugee stuff really kicked in then. So I talked a little about like how I won the international award, right? Like that lead up really was junior year, right? Like I worked really hard junior year to build this organization and to get more people involved. So like really everything at once. And I don't even mention being a full-time student, right? I was taking a lot of science classes so I could like have a strong science GPA for medical school. So all these at one time there was more on my plate than time really would allow, right? I think academically that year taught me to genuinely be okay with doing hard things. Like I really valued comfort before that year, and I think that was the first year where I was okay with like not always being happy or not always getting what I wanted or not always having like breaks or going to every single social event with my friends, right? Like I really learned I could survive off of doing hard things. Like, at some point when you reach that level of discipline in that year, you get a lot of satisfaction out of knowing you're disciplined.
Yeah.
Once that part hits, it gets a lot easier. But that build up where you're still trying to figure out if you can do this for yourself and if you're going to be okay, if you are bouncing too much, because a lot of people will tell you that, like, you're just doing too much, right? Some stuff, right? But to prove to yourself that like everyone told me I couldn't and I can, there's a lot of value and like adrenaline in that, honestly. Um, I didn't ever reach that in high school. Never got to that level of grind. I don't think I ever got to that level of introspection in high school either. I could look back and like be proud of how far I've come. Also, 4 years just isn't enough to kind
Yeah.
of to have that reflection, but, like, to have that reflection over 8 years, or, like, freshman year high school and then comparing myself to, like, junior or senior year of college, I think I've become a lot more mentally tough than I was in high school. I think I would fold a lot more to difficulty in high school, but in college, like, I'm a lot more resilient to difficulty. I think it's got me through this past summer. I went to Bangladesh, right? It was the first time I ever went to a country that hot. Especially in the summer months, right? Like, most people who are from Bangladesh kinda avoid Bangladesh over the summer. So to go
Yeah.
during the most difficult time, to go and in the worst of the worst areas, which is a refugee camp, right? To go with no AC, no electricity, no internet access, and I was doing that along with applying to medical school. All these things at once. It really, really built me into someone who can withstand pain and be okay with it and be proud of it, instead of folding to it. A lot of questions that I'll get in, like, medical school interviews is, like, "How do you know you're ready for medical school?" Right? And less about, like, human science, like, prepared me well. Like, of course, there's that, right? TJ prepared me well. Like, I have a good biology foundation, I'll just build on that, right? But there'll be subjects where you don't have a good foundation in, right? That shouldn't stop you from going to medical school, right? Medical school's supposed to teach you. It's not, you're not supposed to walk in knowing everything. So I think, like, my biggest answer to that question is always, like, I've proven to myself that I can withstand difficulty. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Like, you don't have to always be happy. I think that's very against what a lot of, like, podcasters say now. Like, that's really not the mentality. We really, really prioritize comfort. We prioritize, like, self-care, and these are important, but I think we also have to be okay with difficulty because that builds you, right? And if you're always prioritizing self-care, um, then you're not growing ever.
Yeah, and it's important to sometimes just take a step back and look at the bigger picture too, and just understand that if I do these hard things now, I'm setting myself up for so much success in the
Yes,
future. And I think it's hard. It's definitely hard to,
I
like you
know.
said, not be able to always be going to the social events with your
Yes.
friends or just being part of everything that's going on in your community. But
Yeah,
I think it brings so much value to what you're pursuing in the future and just
yeah,
allowing you to really focus on building up your future for yourself and just building yourself up to that place where now you can sit back and you're in this place where you've worked so hard and now you're here. You're at your
yeah.
goal. And yeah, so I think that's really valuable.
I was gonna say one of the biggest things I think now that I'm looking back on it that really changed or allowed my junior year to be as different from the rest of my years as it was is changing who I surrounded myself with. I think the people that I surrounded myself with before my junior year didn't have the goals that I had, right? So how could we have the same lifestyle, right? I'm now okay with doing hard things. That didn't come from being friends with people who are okay with doing easy things, right? Like that came with pulling myself out of that and being like, they're not doing it because they don't care as much, and that's okay, right? It's different lifestyles. They don't have to be me, right? But if I don't want to become them, then why am I living my life like they are?
Yeah.
Um, so I think really, really, and this is like 18 to 22. I say college is so important for your personal growth, um, because this is the time when you're most malleable, right? This is the time when it's easiest to change things up, right? You're not changing your entire life just because you have new friends, and so really, really take advantage to understand who you actually are and what you want to do and who's your right people. And it doesn't have to be one group, right? Like I think
Yeah.
the biggest problem with college is like this herd culture. I always say like everyone really, really feels the need to stick with a group, and I think half of where I came today is because I never stuck with one group. I'm like among many groups, of course, right?
Mhm.
I don't have one group where like the productivity or whatever it is of that group kind of determines my success. Because no matter what, if you fall into a group, you are the average of that group. And that's exactly how groups work, right? Like you want to do that. So if you surround yourself with really great people, you will learn from them, right? And
Mhm.
that's exactly what you want to do. But pick and choose those people. Be so, so intentional. And don't just live passively with that group, right? Don't allow that group to kind of form your life. You choose that group based on your life, right? It should be the other way around. I think my biggest piece of advice ever for college is like, it's so okay to be lonely in college. It's so okay. Because after college is the time where you have to start choosing people, right? And
Yeah.
use college to understand who those people need to be. Um, and it's the easiest time in college to do that.
Yeah, and I think something that I've heard a lot is one person or one group doesn't have to be everything for you. You
Mm,
know, you can have one group that's very academic focused that you get to study with them, you get to have the same kind of similar goals and aspirations as them. Then you can have another group who's just more similar to your hobbies, if you have something outside of just academics that you really enjoy. What you mentioned about not just surrounding yourself with one group, but many groups of people who maybe understand you in different ways is so important because
Exactly.
you're not just, one person, group or one
Exactly,
person.
exactly. I think that the biggest advice you can give is be introspective. Like keep actively thinking about what am I doing? Am I where I want to be? That's all, right? And be honest if that's not where you want to be.
Yeah.
You can change, right? But you are already ahead of so many people if you're actually being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Really?
And so as we're wrapping up today,
Yes.
one question I want to ask is if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice,
Yeah.
what would it be?
I think one thing that has helped me a lot is you have to stop stressing about things. um I've become a lot more religious over the past 4 years, and that happened because I let a lot of my stress go, and, like, relied on God. You can't, like, force that process. Like, everyone says that, like religion is, like, one thing that I always bring up because it's relevant to me, but people find this in different places, right? Like, whatever this is to you, you can't force it. You can't be intentional. I want to get religious this year. I'm going to do it, right? It
Yeah.
has to come to you when you need it, right? And it came to me because I was taking on so much stress and so much pressure on my own because I was like, how am I going to do all these 50 million things within the time that I want to apply to medical school and get good grades and my teachers have to like me and they have to write me recs and I was so stressed about like being intentional about all these things.
Yeah.
But if you like for me is relying on a higher being or if it's whatever it is for you, you have to like stress comes purely from inaction, right? If you act on things, if you're doing your best, there's no stress because you're like, no matter what, I put in my 100%. If I get zero results, I get zero results. It's not my fault anymore, right?
Yeah.
You have to measure your success not by the outcome. And that's so hard to that's so hard to do. I
Yeah.
haven't gotten there yet, right? But I've really and I've gotten lucky that a lot of things have worked out for me, right? Like the things that I pursued. I think my biggest dream ever walking into Georgetown ever was being convocation speaker, right? When I walked in, I the person that spoke to our class had such a big impact on me. And I was like, wow, I really want to be that person someday, right? When the opportunity came along, I applied for it. So many people applied for it, right? Many people didn't get it, right? There's a very low chance of getting it. I got it. I'm so lucky for that, right? Had I not gotten it, I need to be okay with failing, right? And I fear that because so many things have, I'm so grateful for this. So many things have worked out in my favor, but I'm really trying to be comfortable with failure. And all of that just ties to not putting so much stress on yourself, right? If you're not spiritual, trust the process. That's what I say, right? So much value and so much of what will actually matter to you in the end won't come from planning and won't come from I'm gonna meet this teacher at this time, then I'm gonna tell them this story and they're gonna love me and then they're gonna write me a rec. Like it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You don't plan like this, right? Like like have more trust in who you are and the fact that that will carry you so much farther, right? People forget that so much of your value is already inherent to you. It's not intentional things that you do. Like if you're just naturally yourself, like the spaces you enter will become gold, right? Like people ask me, like, what are the best clubs to join? Like my like freshmen who I'm like advising will like come to me and ask, um, like which clubs like do a lot of action and like will give me the best like publicity for medical school and stuff, right? And it's less about the club and it's more about what you bring to the club, right? And medical schools say this all the time. They're like, oh yeah, like what did you do? Okay. Right. But it's very true because it's like if you have value and you are a person who instills change, no matter where you go, whatever club you choose, you will make impact.
Yeah.
Right. So it's so stop worrying about like the tangibles and little things here and there and just build yourself because that's something that someone can't take from you, right? Like the
Mhm.
club could die tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? But if you are yourself, you could go to a new club and make the same change and make the same impact and produce gold. I think I just overly stressed about the little things about like if I don't get into Georgetown, then I'm gonna end up somewhere where they won't have as many opportunities and stuff like this, right? And like I just overly stressed about things that were out of my control. And the moment I let that go, I could actually focus on the like building like the hard things that I think carried me through 4 years.
Yeah, and I think something that you just mentioned right now that's so important is not just focusing on building yourself around something that helped someone else succeed. Like you said, people will ask you, what did you do?
Yeah.
But I think it's so important for people to realize if you have that passion and you can really portray that passion to someone else or to a
Yeah.
club or, wherever you're looking for opportunities, I think that will really take you so much further
Mm.
than just trying to follow like a blueprint almost.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think what you said, just really loving what you're doing and just
Yeah.
bringing that change and building yourself to be that person who can bring that change
Mm.
no matter what environment you're in is so valuable.
Yeah. the part that's a blueprint is the hard work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's very hard to say, but, like, when people, like, ask like, I'm so privileged to be the person that people ask this question to, but then when they're like, "How did you get there?" Or, like, "How are you like, within 3 years ready to apply for medical schools?" Or, "What should I do?" It's not about getting the same opportunities that I got into, right? Like, I'm lucky that those were great opportunities, and it's very rare to see someone working in the surgical ICU, of course, like, by name, right?
Yeah.
But it's not like I planned the surgical ICU. Like, I did the hard work, and that got me there,
That
and
got you
as long
there.
as you
Yep.
do that, you will get there, right?
Yeah.
It's, like, guaranteed, like, that is how the world works, is that you put in your 100% and you get outcome. And so stop overly stressing about little things. Like, I wish I could tell myself that when I was younger because, like, the things that are genuinely meant for you will fall into
Yeah.
place. Like, you can't avoid them. They literally will fall into place for you.
Yeah. I totally agree with that, and that's something I live my life by, is that
Yeah,
whatever's meant for you will come for you,
exactly.
and whatever door is meant to open for you will open, so,
Yeah,
yeah. Well,
absolutely.
thank you so much for joining me today. It was so inspiring to hear about your journey from TJ to now Georgetown, and the way that you're balancing research and your other pursuits with so much passion. I know a lot of people are gonna take away so much from your story, and thank you again for being here, and thank you to everyone who's listening.
Absolutely, thank you so much for having me. You're so good at this. You're so good at asking follow-up questions. I
Thank you so
absolutely
much.
love talking to you.
Thank you so much. It's been great. Once again, I'm your host, Emma Zareen, and thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the She Persists podcast. As you